portion, so we'll get it underway. We're all set. Good evening. Welcome to the January 29th Village Board work session. This meeting is now called to order. We'll begin with the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty. Sure thing. Nope, just out of habit.
Roll, please. Trustee Fritchie.
Present.
Trustee Lopez.
Present.
Trustee Quezada.
Present.
Present.
I'm sorry, Tom.
We're all
Everyone's
present.
here.
That's the highlight you missed.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on either of the two resolutions that are on for tonight? Please.
Peter Chernoff, 28 North Malcolm Street. I'm also the owner of 36 South Highland, which sits 2 doors down from 20 Maple. Cynthia Wood, the owner of 20 Maple, is here in the audience. We met her today. Abel Ochoa of A&I General Construction went through the house. There is some brick to be removed, some remedial work to tie up the roof to prevent it from moving any further, but certainly no need whatsoever to be demolishing the building or doing really extensive work at this point. We're, happy to speak with Joe Agostinelli tomorrow and, get whatever permits in place to go on and do the work. And then, of course, have the building department inspect it and certify that it's okay. Following that, it's pretty clear, and we've discussed the fact that, Ms. Wood doesn't really have the means to repair this building on a go-forward basis. We'd be working together towards a short sale where ideally I'd be taking the property, paying off the bank, probably a reduced amount, and renovating it and bring it back to its former glory. Any questions, or do I just sit down?
Don't go too far, because this is news to me. I imagine news to some. I'm not the only one, so I'd like to have council give us a little update on what does this mean with where we are in the process with this new.
Mayor, and I thank Ms. Wood for coming, Mr. Cho and Mr. Chernoff. This relates to Resolution B, which is to appoint the two surveyors. I don't think it impacts the ability to appoint the surveyors, which I think should be done, because if in fact repair work can be undertaken before the surveyors do their work, then effectively it moots out the need for the survey to be undertaken. What I did learn today, first from the building department earlier today, but confirmed by Ms. Wood and Mr. Chernoff, is that apparently the two-car garage was demolished at the building by unknown individuals. And trees were taken out, again, by unknown individuals. And I say unknown because it was not done by Ms. Wood. She is still the owner of the house. There is, in fact, and Mr. Chernoff, correct me if I'm wrong, there is equipment actually parked there, so she can't even get into her own driveway by these individuals. So I'll be reaching out to Chief Sylvester to let him know exactly what the situation is. I'll be speaking with the bank's attorney to find out what's going on, but this property is still owned by Ms. Wood. It has never been transferred. There is no judgment of foreclosure, so people should not be coming on the property and essentially taking portions of the property down. So we'll find out about that. But with regard to specifically Resolution B, appointing the surveyors is only, as I've mentioned, I think at last week's work session, the first step. And if in fact the work is undertaken and completed and permits are pulled and it's all checked out, there would be no need for the surveyors to in fact do what they need to do, because the building is then would be at least safe and up to code, and then the other processes can continue.
Anybody else have questions? Stuart, can you just clarify if if we go ahead and do pass this resolution to appoint the two designees? As I recall, there's also a designee that the owner would be able to appoint.
What would happen is we would send a formal notice to Ms. Wood. She would then have, I believe it's 10 or 15 days to appoint, in essence, a third surveyor to do that. It's my hope that with the assistance of the building department and through Mr. Chernoff and Mr. Ochoa, the necessary work will be done. So Ms. Wood would not have to go to the expense, which she probably may not even have, to appoint the surveyor. If the surveyor is not appointed by the owner, then the two surveyors appointed by this board simply do the job of examining the house and determining what, if anything, needs to be done.
So the key factor to that right there, you said about permits being pulled and all of that. They would have to be inspected and everything like that. So what is the purpose of us appointing surveyors if they're going to go through the process of obtaining permits and getting the work done? It seems like we're doing it twice. Am I missing something here?
You're not, but what it does is it has the surveyors appointed in the event if the work is not done, and then we have a circumstance where.
So what would trigger the surveys going to the property?
The surveys would go to the property if, in fact, the work was not done really within the next couple of days to be undertaken, because they have to be there and they have to issue their report within 30 days of their designation.
Okay.
Peter, thank you very much for coming. Ms. Wood, is it possible for you to come to the mic, please? Pete, you can stay there, please. I'm sorry you're going through this.
It's very difficult.
Very troubling to hear situations like this. My question to you is, you have spoken to Peter. Are you guys working to get this issue resolved with the new property?
Yes, we are. Yes, we met today and they looked at the roof. We're talking about the roof, right?
We're talking about the whole property.
Well, I thought it was just the roof.
Well, the roof, and then ultimately, a plan towards fixing the entire property.
Okay, we're gonna do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
But I mean, that's not all gonna be done in 3 days.
no, I'm not asking that part. So I want to make sure that there's an understanding between the two parties that, there's a work to be done. And in regards to the legal part, I'm going to leave it to Stuart and probably you guys to figure it out. Let's say we're not going to go through this resolution. I'm only saying this to keep the conversation going on this part. Let's say we're not going to go through the resolution that is proposed in front of us right now, and the agreements between you two goes forward. Peter, you be hiring an architect to look at this, to do the repairs needed for this particular property?
Actually, J.B. Hernandez has already seen it. Ironically, he's my architect. Well, not ironically, just coincidentally, he's my architect. But was also we've seen.
Peter, can you step closer to the mic? Thank you.
Ms. Woods actually, on her own, called him to the house to look at the roof. So it's just small world. But I've seen photos from him already and had some conversations with him. It's kind of an odd situation. You see, there's a roof that's collapsing, but there's another roof under it. At some point, there was a flat roof. Ms. Wood's father had a more pitched roof constructed on top of said flat
It's
roof.
right on top.
So
Like
even though
Lego
that
toys.
roof looks like a disaster, if you walk by, you'd be like, well, the whole inside of the house must be destroyed. It's actually not, because the old roof is still in there.
So my follow-up question will that be, because you do have an architect that's
Yes.
working with you in all the projects. I don't want this process to get a lengthy process. I don't want this to become another 60 days and nothing happens, another 6 months and nothing happens. What will be your time frame that you're looking at to get these issues resolved?
I think, Abel, you're planning to be there Friday, correct?
I'm planning to be there Friday. I gotta go talk to Joe Castanelli tomorrow.
Ideally, he would go speak with Joe Agostinelli tomorrow just to try to get everything in place. If Joe Agostinelli wants more specified plans from J.B. Hernandez, then that would take some additional time. If we can discuss it verbally because it's really just emergency remedial stuff,
But it
then
does-
maybe that's not necessary.
It does
That's
become a structural element, and by New York State, by building code itself, you still need drawings to be submitted to the building department.
then that would be the case.
So Stuart, go ahead.
Sorry, so I'm in, and I don't know what the legality parts is this. So Stuart, I'm gonna rely on you, because both of them are here. I'll be in favor actually having them work this out and not go through resolution B at this point, because I just don't think we may have to. If we don't see a progress within the next couple of weeks, then we can, again, that's my suggestion, and that's my ask as well from you. And
But before you answer, Stuart, because I want to hear from you too, but let me just give you I know this has been something that the building department has identified and it's been through the courts, and this has been a process that's been undertaken for some time, Stuart, correct?
It's been before the courts on other matters involving Ms. Wood. That's correct. And this one has been an issue that's been around, and they went to the step of filing the notice to make the repair.
Can I speak?
Of course.
I actually noticed that the roof was having a real problem, and I actually, before the order of repair, called in a contractor and got the work started before the order of repair. And then the contractor did a study similar to what he did, and then Mr. Hernandez was the architect that he called in, and he did a an architectural plan to fix the roof, which I brought to court on, I think it was January 7th, and they were intent upon demolishing the house and did not want to hear that, we were negotiating this report or that I had started repairs.
I think we're in a little bit of an awkward position because we certainly, making sure that buildings are maintained properly is our responsibility for the health and safety of the whole community. And this is an unusual, I don't recall ever being in this particular position in the village before. So it's a little unclear to me. I love the idea that there are now other community members that want to be involved. I would much prefer that the village doesn't have an active role to play in this. And if it can be handled between the owner and other, if Peter has an interest in the building and you could figure something out that doesn't involve the government, that would be ideal. But I don't know that if we continue moving forward with Resolution B, does that preclude the ability for Ms. Wood to work with Peter Chernoff in having this resolved?
No, it doesn't preclude anything. What I would say, Mayor, is, and this is, I think, to follow up on Trustee Fritchie's point, I would not have an objection, at least from my perspective, from a legal perspective, that if we allowed Mr. Ochoa and Mr. Chernoff, whoever, to speak with the building inspector to see what needs to be done. Because the resolution specifically just talks about that the roof is sinking and the bricks on the upper portion are cracking and separating. That's the nature of the specific repair. If that repair can be undertaken fairly quickly and easily, that obviates the need for the surveyor. To the extent that there may be other issues with regard to the building, that's already with the building department, and there and there are matters that are currently pending before the Justice Court with regard to that. So there are separate OTRs or now notice of appearances. This is specifically with regard to the brickwork and the concern there, because we did get a number of complaints from folks that there were issues.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
So I'm going to at least repeat what I'm hearing. This is not about a single roof item, although that's what seems to be the conversation here. That this has been an ongoing issue with this building. That things have, I'm just repeating what I heard. This is ongoing, and in fact, there are still more things still pending in court. So this is not about a roof. It's about an entire building and the condition that it's in. I don't know all the details, but I'm not sure that's important. Two, that things are going on at this building without Ms. Woods knowing what is going on in the building by her own, acknowledgement, but really by the conversation, I'm simply recapping that there is equipment there, that trees have been removed, so that there are things going on in this building that is not being managed really by anybody because people seem to be just going on this property. What I'm trying to understand are two things. What is the relationship here between the two parties? Are you buying this property?
Ideally, yes. She's been in foreclosure for some time, so I don't know how much the bank is going to claim as owed, and I don't.
You need to be near the microphone. Could you just repeat what
sorry.
you said?
Ideally, yes. We don't know how much the bank is going to ultimately claim that they're owed.
So you don't know whether you will be buying this property or not.
I'd be approaching the bank with a short sale proposal.
Okay.
A reasonable bank would be willing to negotiate on that basis. An unreasonable bank, the type that sends workers on to demolish garages with no permits, I don't know. I can't speak to it. I haven't spoken to them yet. But I'm doing this with the, understanding that I may be out some cost and maybe nothing's going to happen. But at least in the meantime, we prevent, kind of significant, beautiful historic house from being demolished, which I think is something that we should be trying to do.
Okay. Ms. Woods, is that your understanding that you're selling your house?
I intend to sell it to him if we can work it out. Yes.
If you can work it out.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, we have to. We have no contract. We're trying to go through the steps. This is the first step here. I should say,
first time yesterday. So
yeah.
Okay. No, I mean, I appreciate the effort.
But I mean, I would like to sell it to him. One problem that I have is all my furniture is in the house. All my everything for my whole life is in the house. And I need to get that out. And I have not been able to do that because of people banging on my property, me being afraid to be in my property. I feel watched. I told him this. And there's just a number of things going on. And my house is a historic home in that my father was a well-renowned physician here in this community for 50, 60 years. The house has been in my family for like 80-something years. My father in the 1950s started the polio vaccination program and the other vaccination programs for the first time in Ossining. And he did other wonderful things. He was a school doctor for all the schools in Ossining for over 50 years. He was also the doctor for most of the nursing homes in the community, plus he's in the hospital. He was born on my street in a house that was taken down. He grew up on my street. And, that's the home I grew up in, and that was his house. I have things in the house, if I could ever get to it, that maybe the Historical Society would like, because he was a prominent member of the community and much loved as a doctor.
And I appreciate all that. And as has been said, we're obviously at a place that nobody wants to be in. And I think I'm seeing a lot of people looking for solutions. So my view is that this has been going on for a while and we should let the process of government continue. And I would be in support of actually having surveys because we don't actually have agreements between the people here. We have a conversation and we have great intent and we have people who have come together, and I'm feeling like maybe even some of our staff have brought this together and made it happen, and I'm seeing all good things and solutions. But from a perspective of what we should be doing, I think this is an ongoing issue, and I think we should let the wheels keep turning in the way they're supposed to. So I'm in support of the resolution, which does not preclude any of the good stuff we just discussed. And if either party decides not to continue or changes one's mind, the wheels will continue in the motion that they started. And I am not comfortable with stopping those wheels from continuing. So I'm in support of the resolution.
Can I speak? I think what you're saying makes perfect sense. I would only ask that, we could hold off the survey a little bit, only insofar as that ultimately gets charged to the property and it's just one more cost in a long string of costs. But what you're saying makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing happens in 3 weeks, you don't have to come back here and vote on a whole new resolution and notice it again and so forth. I would just, request verbally, and if you could hold it off to just avoid charging one more thing to the property, which is how I understand the survey winds up occurring,
Right.
that would be great.
Stuart, what is the timeline? If we pass this resolution tonight, what's the timeline for when the survey would
30
actually?
days after notice is sent out to Ms.
Enough time.
Wood. So,
So sometime early March.
yeah, no, that would be, by the way, by the time that they would do it and get their reports. So there's time. They don't have to, they're not going out, let's say, next week.
Tomorrow
or
morning,
something like
right.
that or whatever.
And that's that. Thank you, Victoria, because that's what I was going to ask you that because you did send out to get numbers from two different surveyors or architectural or engineers
Right.
on this. So we don't have to. You don't have to assign this task to any of them just yet, and we have to wait and see if the process continues with them. And if we don't see any progress within the next, like you said, 2 or 3 weeks, then you'll assign the case to the two people that will do the survey for this particular case.
Right, all you're doing here is appointing.
Yeah.
I'm not actually, engaging, basically. That's correct.
Can we put a time? Can we
Was
put a
it the-
time
When would
frame
the
on
engaging
this?
take place? When would they be engaged? When would they go out and do the survey and thus start accruing the cost?
I can talk to them, but I'm sure, what they're doing is not going to take a lot, and one of them is a village employee, so they could do it in 2, they could do it in 3 weeks, and I'm sure the report can be turned around very quickly.
But I believe to Mr. Chernoff's point that, instead of putting additional costs into the purchase of the home, I wouldn't be objected to table this, not to get rid of it, but to give him whatever it is, 2 weeks to come back to a work session, and, things can happen very quickly in 2 weeks, and, unless it gets into a whole architectural thing, which I don't believe that's the issue.
So you got numbers from two different people, I guess. What was the cause of that?
We got numbers from one, the other person did not respond.
Okay,
And
so
the
on
number
what-
I got from the one person was $1,500.
Okay.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was that cheap.
Yeah, I mean,
actually.
it's really not a,
In the scope of the cost of the property.
In New York
and
City,
all
this
the
would be
work
$5,000
It's not
just to
cheap
show
for
up.
me.
Understood,
I
understood.
But
But if somebody's looking to renovate and purchase a building, that's
Yes.
sort of so that's not going to be the obstacle to you being able to consider the property.
no, it won't. But in terms of, I mean, I can't speak for Joe Agostinelli, but I would imagine that the detail he needs is only going to relate to whatever's holding up the front of that roof.
Yeah, but you can provide all the information with an architect doing the drawings and putting the details in there as well.
Sure, and in fact, JB Hernandez already, I mean, he sent me photographs of the roof and so forth.
So now,
He's well aware of it. I think
What
he
is-
could do this very quickly.
So, what is interesting to me, and I was not part, and probably Stuart knows more than that, but JB Hernandez did the drawings. I'm hearing that he did some drawings for this particular property. Was that not enough? Or what
I
was
don't
the
know what
case?
Mr. Hernandez did for the property, so I can't answer that.
Yes, you.
I think he did some drawings probably to fix the entire roof. What I would envision is more, emergency bracing and getting a blue tarp over the hole in the roof. To rebuild the entire roof is, extensive and honestly more than I would do if I don't own the property. I mean, there's a certain amount of cost that I'm willing to front, in hopes that somehow this all works out and we can stabilize the building and make sure there's no further damage and no public danger.
Mhm.
Can I speak? There was a blue tarp put on the building after my contractor looked at it. And then Mr. Hernandez, he went up and he, inspected the roof in order to do a plan. So he inspected it, he took the pictures, and that blue tarp somehow came off of the building. I mean, it's on the corner. It's not there anymore, and that's another mystery. Why it was removed and who removed it.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty clear.
Okay, so we still have
Okay.
thank you. I think we've heard. I mean, and we certainly didn't keep anything. We didn't put any minutes of how long people. Oh, we did. But anyway, this was an interesting conversation that I was not anticipating. Are we ready to move on with the resolutions?
Resolution A, authorization for village manager to sign a contract with PKF O'Connor Davies to provide professional auditing services. Resolved that upon review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with PKF O'Connor Davies LLP, 500 Mamaroneck Avenue, Harrison, New York, 10528, to provide professional auditing services to the Village of Ossining for the fiscal years ending December 31, 2019, 2020, and 2021, such contract to be consistent with the December 10, 2019 revised proposal. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Comments on the board? Clerk?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Resolution B, designation of persons to conduct a survey of the building at 20 Maple Place and authorizing the Corporation Council to commence litigation, determining that the building is a public nuisance and directing that it be repaired or torn down. Whereas on December 24, 2019, a notice of unsafe building order to repair was sent to Cynthia Wood, the owner of 20 Maple Place, Village of Ossining, by Village of Ossining Code Enforcement Officer Gary Gibbs. And whereas the owner was advised, you are in violation of sections 95-3C and 95-3H of the Village of Ossining Code by having a defect to constitute an unsafe building in which the roof is sinking and causing the bricks on the upper front portion of the building to crack and separate from the structure 20 Maple Place. And whereas the notice further provided that the repair work was to be started within 10 days of December 24, and that the work was to be completed by January 24, 2020. And whereas the owner has not started any work to repair the building at 20 Maple Place. And whereas pursuant to Village of Ossining Code, Section 95-7, the Village of Ossining Building Inspector sent a letter dated January 14, 2020 to the Board of Trustees requesting that a survey be made of the premises. And whereas in the letter the building inspector advised the Board of Trustees that the roofing system and brick building facades are in dilapidated condition and are in danger of collapse, causing a hazard to the occupants of the building and the general public, and that at the most recent court appearance on January 7, 2020, regarding the alleged building code violations, the property owner acknowledged receipt of the notice and advised she did not have the money needed to make the necessary repairs. And whereas the notice and letter was sent to the owner's attorney, and the attorney for the lender, and whereas pursuant to Section 95-7, the two individuals designated by the Board of Trustees, one shall be an official of the village and the other a practical builder, engineer, or architect. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees designates Assistant Building Inspector Carlo Valente and Michael Macri, P.E. of Grossfield Macri Consulting Engineers, P.C., 75 Smith Avenue, Mount Kisco, New York, to conduct a survey of 20 Maple Place and provide a report to the building inspector not later than 30 days from the date of notification of their designation. And be it further resolved that if the survey report determines that 20 Maple Place is dangerous or unsafe, the Corporation Council, pursuant to Section 95-10, shall make an application in the Supreme Court, Westchester County, for an order determining that 20 Maple Place is a public nuisance and directing that the building be repaired or torn down. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's on the board. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain.
Do we have a motion to adjourn the special session and go into work session?
So moved. Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so
Thanks a lot.
we haven't done announcements or anything.
Oh, do you want, yes, do you want to do announcements?
It's all,
Sorry.
it's a strange night.
Jumping the gun here.
Does anybody have any announcements, calendar items, things you want to let folks know that you've been up to? Somebody want to go before me? Go right ahead, Omar.
Yeah, I'll start. Good evening. Trustee Casada and I last night met with the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee, where we interviewed a couple of firms who are going to help us. We were trying to decide who could help us to move forward with the comprehensive plan. And this is a really important decision because they would not only be helping us to guide the process along, but would also be helping us with the community meetings and the public engagement, which is such an important part of this process. And so we had some of those interviews last night. We'll be choosing a firm soon, hopefully. That is the vision, so we can get this work started as soon as possible.
Anyone else? Okay, I will update you on a couple of the interesting meetings that I've attended. Just today, I was at the Westchester County Center with county leaders, and County Executive George Latimer led us in a presentation about Westchester's food waste study that they did and what's being recommended from that. And I attended it with Town Supervisor Dana Levenberg, which was very appropriate because Ossining is in an incredibly exciting moment. Within just weeks, we in the whole town of Ossining, so that includes everyone in the village of Ossining, is going to have the opportunity to participate in a food scraps program where you'll be able to collect the food scraps in your home and bring it to a central location, which is, and you can fill in all the blanks for me, Maddie, because I'm sure you were involved in this when you were way up there on the third floor at Cedar Lane Park. And it is in partnership with T-Town Nature Preserve, and with most of it is covered by funding from a grant. So we are really positioned well in the whole town of Ossining to be able to then take advantage of some of what is going to be coming down and available to communities even later this year from Westchester County, which will offset even more of the expenses. And it's a tremendous amount of our waste stream that is currently being paid for in tipping fees and going through the incinerator with regular garbage that will then be taken out of the waste stream and used in an environmentally sound way. And I'm very excited that the town led that effort, and I'm excited to take advantage of their hard work. It's a great project for Ossining, and kudos to the county for undertaking the study to learn about how it can be done on a broader scale. One of the challenges is that there aren't very many facilities that can take the food scraps. And right now, most of it gets trucked up to Ulster County, which is an expense and also, emitting some more greenhouse gases just to bring it up there. So Westchester County is ideally looking to be able to have an anaerobic digester in Westchester County, but there's a few levels of things that need to happen, and that's not instantaneous. So there's incremental steps to get us further to that goal. It was really valuable study, and I'm glad that the county undertook it and that Ossining is one of the leaders in that. And then just the other day, also with Supervisor Levenberg and with our own Jamie Hoffman, we attended I guess it was on Monday, the Westchester County Census 2020 kickoff meeting. Ossining Counts was called out as one of the complete count committees that is underway. And we heard from some of the folks at the Westchester Complete Count Committee. And you're going to hopefully be overwhelmed by the amount of information there is to know about the census. It's really not that complicated, just mostly that it's important and that we need to have a complete count because it is critical for us to be accurately represented at every level of government and to have access to the funding that we need for all of the people of Ossining. And so we're happy to participate in that. Glad to see there's so much support, and I understand there is also going to be potentially some additional grant money and that can help pay for some of or distribution of funds directly to municipalities to help pay for some of our outreach efforts to our community. And it's a little different than they were anticipating, so we need to get in line to be able to access some of that. And lastly, I'll just talk about the meeting that we were in just an hour ago with the Board of Trustees. This was the first time in a little while that we've had the fourth Wednesday dinner, and it was a good opportunity for this new board to be able to get together in a more relaxed environment. It is a public meeting, so it's publicly noticed, but to talk about things that we don't necessarily need to have staff there and dedicate staff time to, and it was an opportunity for fellowship, to use your word, Trustee Lopez, for fellowship, and then to also discuss some of the items that have come to us that we need to give feedback to the staff, for example, like the reimbursement policy is something we're going to discuss at the next work session, so we clarified what is some of the information we're going to ask the staff to prepare so that we can have a worthwhile conversation in a couple of weeks. All right. Anything I missed? You want to add on to that?
I do. I don't want to interrupt. I want to add on.
Oh, that's okay. A lot of the conversation was how do we conduct ourselves with each other in meetings and blah blah blah. So
Right.
go ahead.
We have a no interrupting rule. Very important. Adding on to the census, there's a hiring event for the census happening February 12th from 1 to 6 at the Joseph E. Caputo Community Center. So that is a great opportunity for folks to come out to learn about those positions and apply. It's really important for folks in Ossining to be involved in working in the census as well, because who knows the community better than the people who live there. So that's February 12th, 1 to 6.
And it's also really good pay for a short-term part-time job. It's like $21 an hour kind of jobs for people who are just looking for some extra pay for a season. So you should show up and bring a friend. All right. Anything else, Madam Manager?
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Village Treasurer Thomas Warren up to the microphone. Tom is here to discuss establishing a budget and financing for our Edmunds software, financial software. We have signed a contract with Edmunds. We have a schedule in place, an implementation plan, and in order to get this started and make payment, we require a board resolution. So I will turn it over to our treasurer to provide more detail on that.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. First, I want to thank you for the resolution to appoint the auditors for the next 3 years. As Karen had mentioned, we now have a tentative project plan. My deputy and I and our IT director had a very lengthy conference call last week to go over this proposed tentative project plan, and we moved some things around, and we actually changed it from 2 phases to 3, and we do have tentative start and go live dates established, and they're going to be they've promised that this is going to be updated by this coming Friday, so that it can be included as an important part of the contract. So the first phase is the finance, the accounts payable and purchasing, the payroll, human resources, the employee self-service, and the vendor self-service. And the start date is this coming March 5th, and our go live date is July 1st. And the second phase is basically the utility billing module, as well as our accounts receivable and business license module, and also to the web inquiry and payment portal, which we've been very excited about having that available for people to pay their water bills online. That start date is going to be June 1st, and go live is September 1st. And the third phase is the tax billing. And we made this a separate phase because the town has 2 separate tax collection cycles, and the village has one. And we're really not going to be using this module until we actually send out our tax bills for 2021, because we've already issued the tax bills for 2020. But the start date will be August 1st, and the go live date is November 1st. And having the software, before we actually send out the tax bill, will allow everybody to become acquainted with the software, because we'll take all of our current unpaid tax bills at that time and put them on the new system so that they can make payments against it and be familiar when the actual software is used to generate the tax bills for 2020. So having the the project plan in place, now we're coming to the board to establish a capital project. When we were actually working on the 2020 capital plan, we thought that we were going to have to ask the board for some fund balance monies to help pay for this project. But when we realized that if we just liquidate the remaining purchase order for the Munis project that hasn't been going forward, that actually did free up enough money already that was sitting in the Munis project to pay for the village's share of about $129,500. And then we also have the town contribution to make the total project about $207,000, which was $202,000 for the actual contract with Edmunds, and then we had $3,600 for the computers and the printers, so that we can actually be taking payments and processing payment electronically at the counter instead of processing everything manually and then entering them at a later date. And there was an extra $1,600 that was left over in the Munis project budget, so we just rolled that over since we didn't have, it's been a while since we had estimates as to what the IT needs would be for the project, and if it's not needed, we'll just close it and send it back to the general fund. So next week's agenda item for the board is the resolution to establish the Edmunds project, and at the same time to close the Munis project. So that will be off our books as of December 31st, 2019.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for presenting this. Very exciting stuff. So, two questions that I have. One has to do with electronic payments. Can you tell me a little bit about how that works? And specifically, my question is, if someone makes an electronic payment, does their information, their payment information, live with the village, or does it live with Edmunds?
Actually, it doesn't live with either, and actually uses up in Yorktown. They use the same software for the water bills, so actually use that and actually pay by credit card to see how that works as well. And it actually goes to it's encrypted, and it goes to the third party provider of the payment source, the credit card company, and the e-checks that people can use. So it's there, and it's not on our system, and it's not on the Edmunds system.
Great. I'm very happy to hear that. And second, if someone has an issue, there's a technical issue engaging with that electronic payment system, does that troubleshooting happen with the third party, or does it happen with Edmunds, or does it happen, who troubleshoots tech issues?
I would think that the, right now we're taking payments electronically for property tax payments, and as far as I know, anytime anybody has an issue, they contact our office directly, and we resolve it. But we haven't generally had any issues that I'm aware of. It's been working seamlessly, but I would say that the village, or when the town taxes are being processed, that they would contact the village or the town first.
Thank you. Last question. Do you know what kind of payments will be accepted? Is it credit card and debit cards only? Or is like PayPal? Or is there anything else that would be accepted?
I wasn't anticipating PayPal. I'm not that technical with PayPal. I kind of assumed that I know that, like, when I made some personal donations for organizations, you go to the PayPal and you put in your credit card number, and then the payment ends up with that organization. I'm not aware that our system is associated with PayPal, but we were anticipating accepting credit cards or debit cards or e-checks.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Because we've been, thank you, Tom, and thank you for bringing this up. And I don't want to bring too much of the history, but I have heard similar stuff before, a couple years back with anyway. So I'm glad, and hopefully all the implementation takes place. So I have a couple quick questions in regards to the contract milestones and the time frame that you have that you just presented to us. One, I have not seen the contract, so I would like to get a copy of that contract that was signed. Again, just me. I'm not sure if the rest of the board wants to see that, but I think it's important for us to actually know what that was. And when we're talking about the contract, my recollection was put a timeline on this and parts that what is going to be established, what are they going to be performing, how are they going to be performing on this, because we've been through this before. So you talked about different stages and how this process is going to take place. My question, I guess, to Stuart or to Karen will be, was that part of the contract?
The contract had a provision, or has a provision, that within 15 days of the signing, I believe, there was supposed to be a meeting, which is what took place to do this. Well, I discussed these dates with Tom because they are tentative dates. So I communicated with General Counsel at Edmunds, and they expect, as Tom said, by the end of this week to have a much tighter, in terms of the dates, in terms of what those dates will be. That document, in terms of the timeline, becomes part of the contract. And it's specifically provided in the agreement that that becomes part of the contract.
Thank you. This is very helpful. So now my next question goes to payment. How do we make payment on this? I don't want to make the same mistake that we made last time with the software that we are currently using. So how do we develop this payment part? Because right now we add in the capital project. We have the funds. It's broken down between what we are paying, what the town is paying. Explain to me, Tom, a little bit or more, I guess, and probably Stuart, are we doing a 50% payment when they completed one task? Are we doing 100% when they're finished? How does that work in terms of the contract, in terms of the implementation?
It's spread over 3 years, a third this year, a third by, I want to say like December 31st, 2020, and then a third at the end of 2021. So we'll be live more than a whole year before that third payment is due.
And are there benchmarks tied to that as well? Do they get paid if they're not on track? Or do they have to actually get the work done before they get paid for phases 2 and 3?
That's why they need to have those dates within the agreement to provide us with those dates there. There's also separate payments for the host services, which is a separate
I understand
contract.
that, yeah.
A little bit far less, but there is a contract for that.
But just to make sure I understand what you said. If there's a payment due, say at the end of 2020, and there's an expectation that they'll have gotten, you gave us all the dates of when all these things are going to go live. If they get behind, which is inevitable, but if they get behind too much, do they still get their payment? Or do we hold on to that until they meet the expectations that were set?
I'll review the contract specifically because I don't have the language right in my head now. We did put something in because I know there was a concern of both the town as well as from our end to make sure that there was a protection in the event that things slipped, as will probably happen anyway. But that was done. But in terms of splitting the payments, that was something that Edmunds was actually very open to doing from the very beginning.
I don't think we don't usually get this much in the weeds with these things about the contract. We just got so burned the last time, so I think people are still a little
But
still recovering from that and trying
I'll
to
answer
prevent
those
it,
questions
so.
and I'll provide you trustee Casada with the executed agreement.
We still review the vouchers, so I guess if we're still not happy with some of the performance that they have done, we can always hold off for the payment, I guess.
Yes, but we all want to hold to the contract. So we want a contract that we can all feel that we're abiding by.
Of course
so
we do.
thank you, Stuart, for looking into that.
Sure.
Good. Anybody else with questions? And my only question, Karen, is the one thing that you and I talked about, and it probably doesn't fit into exactly what's been discussed, but with Edmunds being and so much more being online, particularly our building permits, one thing we had talked about in relation to code enforcement is could we get a landlord registry, and it might be a lot easier when Edmunds is up and running. And so I don't know where that fits into this conversation, but I don't ever want it to be forgotten because it seems like it's a really good first step in getting to the next level that we're trying to achieve with code enforcement. Is that, you're nodding, so you know what I'm talking about, but it's not considered in this, right?
It really hasn't been considered in this, other than we have been discussing and we really haven't gotten into any substantive discussions on landlord registry. So some of that will come up in discussions we'll be having in the coming weeks on code enforcement and discussions we've had with Karen Black and May 8 Consulting. But it's certainly something that what we're looking to do is make sure that from we're covering as many bases as possible and really using technology to its fullest advantage to make sure that we can work in a more efficient manner.
Great. Good.
I'm sorry, quick question.
Oh, you escaped.
No,
Sorry.
no, yeah.
Almost.
No, which is no, good thing because we're going to be having, we're going to be having a great service for our community. There's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming up with this particular. I'm really excited about this. I'm being serious now. But again, it goes back to something very similar to what we do on the building department. We're going to be doing training because there's a lot of new stuff that's happening. So I'm curious to know if there's some sort of information to the public and be like more towards what Omar was talking about. If I have a problem, is it going to be probably a PDF format? Is there something out there that's going to be live in our website saying these are the steps that you need to take to do a payment online? Is it going to be really simple? Because kind of going back into history, we were talking about when I pay something, my water bill. I have a login portion that I can go and look at the history of what my water bill was for the past 20 years or whatever the case may be, because that will also reduce the foiling portion of that. So there's a lot of great things that are happening with this new software. So I guess my question is it what kind of information is going to be shared to the public and how will they obtain this and where is it going to be available?
On the water, there's actually two options. One, you can make it private so that you have to have a login and you can only look at your information, or it could be open, like it is up in Yorktown, where, it's just consumption information and billing information that anybody can look at anybody's water bill. So that's something that we need to decide, but
Curious.
I can tell you.
I'd like to hear from Yorktown why they decided to do that and what the fallout is before you make that decision.
But and thank you. That's very helpful. And again, we haven't. I'm not sure. At least we haven't. Had a discussion. I know you and I kind of touched bases when they were interviewing the people in Edmonds. But is it going to be something prepared either by Edmonds or our village staff in regards to this is how you do this. This is where you go.
Yeah.
This is the steps.
Well, my experience, I went to the Yorktown website and I clicked on the icon that said pay your water bill here. And it was step by steps. It first takes you to the software interface that Edmonds has. And it gives you step by step. There's a number of search options. You can search by street. You can search by name. If you know the account number, you can look at the account number and you just find it and then you just follow the instructions to pay either by e-check or by credit card payment. It's very easy.
Let me ask the question in a different way.
Okay.
Because I'm not. So you guys send a water bill. Every 3 months, we send a water bill. Mm-hmm. Is it possible for us, and I'm looking at you, but I'm talking to Karen and Maddie as well. Is it possible for us to add something to those water bills and let the public know that this is happening and this is something that they be able to access in the near 6 months?
Oh, so you just want to put a little notice into the water bills and say, hey, this is so great. Now you
Yes.
can pay this online.
Exactly.
Look what we're offering
Yes.
you now. All
I
this,
think that we could probably
That's a
do
good idea.
something like that.
it's a great idea.
And then we
Communication with the something public. like send to this address or go online and pay your bill. It's like you can register to pay automatically.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
And it takes away me writing a check. So yes.
Yes.
So what we could do is we can do an announcement that it's coming, and then on all future bills have something printed where you have the option, and we can encourage. Yes.
Great idea. Good. So are we comfortable
And
having this resolution on for next week?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I add a follow-up from 2 weeks ago when my deputy was here in my absence, and she presented capital projects that were funded with fund balance from 2019, and she had mentioned that the second step was going to be 4 large trucks that were going to be bonded, and hopefully that would be on the first meeting in February. So today I did receive from our bond counsel the bond resolution. There's just one bond resolution that covers all 4 vehicles for $580,000, which includes the 6-wheel dump truck with plow, spreader, and controller, $250,000. There's 2 4x4 Mason dump trucks at $90,000 each, and there's also the bucket utility truck for $150,000. In total, the bond resolution is $580,000, and that will be on the February 5th legislative meeting, as well as the resolution to establish the capital projects. And just for your information, the bond payments annually would be about $47,500, of which the general fund portion would be about $33,500, which is a very small percentage of the budget. That's actually 15/100ths of 1% of a tax levy, which is about $229,000. So we do believe that it is, it can be accommodated in the 2021 budget for the next bond payment.
It's fine with me. I will actually not be at the February 5th meeting, so I'll turn to our deputy mayor, who will be chairing the meeting. Are you comfortable with that, Deputy Mayor Levin?
I'm sorry, I'm reading something.
I see that.
I have a situation going on. Go ahead.
Um,
I'm sorry.
So we're adding something to the February 5th.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I got the last piece of that.
I think we're good.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you.
Can I jump in super quick?
Yeah.
I would actually love to follow up with Yorktown. I'm looking up
Okay.
because I'm looking up. This is
We're
what
back to
website
the
looks
the
like.
water transparency
Yeah,
here.
so when you click on, if you just hit enter, so you get the opportunity to put an address or your number or whatever. You just hit enter. It's all the addresses. You can just choose one, and you can also see the history of whether it's been paid or not. I mean, I'm just curious if there's been any fallout from that. I think it's just a funny. There
Yeah.
you go.
Yeah.
Is-
We
is
You know
know
how
this.
many showers you're taking.
Just look at the same concept as Greenberg has on their building department and their website when you go to GIS. So
Right. Okay.
But you may not everybody might want to have the whole community be able to see if they ever missed a water payment.
I mean, this may fall into the same kind of category.
Does it
of,
say
like,
late? If you're late.
I assume it says late. Yeah, I mean, I've only been able to find paid.
So,
ones,
yeah.
but-
Paid eventually. Anyway, we'll look into it.
Yeah.
We'll look into it.
I think some of this actually falls into sort of, it's public, it's just now available so easily. It's actually always been public. It's just that you couldn't get to it. It's sort of, I think, it seems to me, I don't feel comfortable. Like, I feel like it's already too much information about my house, like,
Right.
right. But like everything. But it is sort of public, and I guess the feeling must be, but certainly, I hope you do call them. It's sort of like if I live next door to somebody and we're both of the same sort of family size and we're both in the same sort of size house, and my water bill is like, and theirs is like this, and now I'm thinking one of us might be overpaying. It's actually not bad information to have that I never had before. I immediately went into, gee, it's like you seriously know everything about me. The taxes I pay, like got a drone flying over my house. You could watch me sunbathing in the back every 15 minutes. I mean, you really do feel a loss of why does everybody need to know this? But I could actually see that, like, I could sort of understand that it's public anyway. It's just a matter that now they're making it so easy to find.
Yeah.
So, but I think that Tom said you don't have to have that sort of turned on, that information. That's not, that's like a decision that we might want to make.
Right, that's what we have to decide.
That's all.
It's very
It's a
similar
good
to what
thing.
the building department has. We
Oh,
do
yeah.
have a website in the building department part where it gives you the description, it gives you violations, and at some point, they had some other stuff in there that it wasn't. It was by accident. So there's some privacy within that as well. It's a discretion that it has to be done. So, but that's a different conversation again.
But we'll have to make that judgment when the time comes. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's a very interesting discussion. Madam Manager, what's next?
Next up, we have more reports from the Water Department. So this time up, I'd like to invite our Superintendent of Water, Andrew Teese, up. But tonight we'll be talking about our water tanks, our Lakeville, Pleasantville, and Torbank tanks, and the construction management proposal for the water tank THM removal system that will be being installed at those 3 tanks. And this is just another element that is important to ensuring that our water is safe and of high quality. So I would like to turn this over because we get into more technical details. Again, this is for the construction management portion, and then we'll be looking to develop cost proposals to bid the project. But I will turn this over to Mr. Teese to explain more about the many ways Ossining is taking care of its water supply.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
The suggestion of paying the water bill online, we could actually probably put that in the annual water quality report too. So, because that we're forced to mail out to all the public every year, so that's it. We'll look into that. You have before you a proposal for CM services for the THM removal tank mixing project. What this is, well, let me talk about the project itself. Hazen and Sawyer was contracted to design a trihalomethane removal system. And basically what that is it's elaborate mixers and sprayers in each one of our 3 tanks out in our distribution system. They designed it based on the hydraulic model of our distribution system and how the water travels through the system. And it was requested by us because we are required by the EPA to make sure that we maintain maximum contaminant levels of THMs and HAAs below what the EPA tells us to for the disinfectant byproducts. There's been times when the numbers have been elevated but not above the standard, but we've been pretty nervous at times. And in fact, a year and a half ago, we took the large Pleasantville Road tank, the 3.8 million gallon tank, out of service because we noticed these numbers go up. And if everybody remembers back, we signed an agreement with New York City for the water demand management program. And it's been a great thing. We've found over 600,000 gallons in leaks in the last 4 years, which avoids us to have to make the plant that much larger in the future. But the problem that actually happened was the leaks that we had in the system allowed the water to move around and dissipate. And when that happened, the chlorine that's in the system that's there for disinfection didn't have that much time to react with these organics. So now that the water is in the distribution system longer, the reactions there and the numbers were elevated a little bit. So we said to ourselves, something so good, kind of went the other way, but it's still the right move. And there is a solution, and the solution is Wednesday we have a bid opening for the design system for all 3 tanks at 10 a.m. 6 contractors picked up on that, so I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, the village signed an agreement with Hazen and Sawyer to design this elaborate system. But then we waited on the CM contract because we didn't know what we were dealing with. It would be kind of hard to get a construction management contract without knowing what was going to be designed. So that's why I'm coming to you for the design or for the CM work. Dan Ciarsa is an engineer, a local engineer. He has extensive experience. I've dealt with him on pumps, mixers, controls. And this job is mostly electrical and a lot of control work. And that's why I thought he would be a good fit for this. And we have a proposal in front of you for $46,800. It's broken up into project meetings, document review, site inspection, startup certification, testing, and then the total bid price of $46,800. Tomorrow, if the board decides tonight that they are good with this proposal, I will send a letter to the health department stating that Hazen and Sawyer designed this system, but for economies of scales and based on a local company, we would like to have this person sign off that they've reviewed the construction and that Hazen and Sawyer does know that that's the path that we're taking, and they are willing, as long as they get a letter from CRC Engineering saying that it was built in compliance, Hazen and Sawyer will sign off on the final documents, because in the end, the health department wants to see an engineering firm design it, and at the end, they want to see their signature at the end. So I've already spoken to them. The health department is good with this, but I still want to send the letter.
It seems like it makes sense. Anybody have any questions for Andy on this?
Thank you, Andy. I know, I probably somewhere between 5 and 10% of what you said. I got so,
Okay.
and it sounds like you know what you're talking about, and I think it's good. Knowing the position that I'm in, I want you to imagine that you were me. What would I, as you, ask you, considering that I don't know what I should be asking?
Okay. Do you know?
Well said.
First of all, you probably want to know what we're doing. So basically, it's these large tanks that we're putting these aeration blower systems into, and the tanks need to be taken out of service, and the contractor needs to provide temporary tanks so that we can go offline with some of these tanks. That's why it's like an 8-month project. Once the tanks are taken out of service, these mixers are installed in these tanks. They're wired up, and essentially you're taking tanks. If you've been to Richard Wishney Park, that tank, you're trying to circulate that entire water, not like a vortex, but just mix it. Because what happens is water goes into the tank and it goes right out. And sometimes it's not like the water goes into the tank and it comes out the other end. And you get short cycling. And sometimes you can have water that sits there for days, depending on how the community uses the water and how the filter plant pumps the water. So we want to make sure it's uniform in the tank. And then the advantage of this system is because of the type of THM that we have, it off-gases easily, which is great. So you have all these gases on top of this tank that we need to have blower systems removing them. The tests show that the type of THMs that we have in this engineered system will dramatically reduce it by 60%. So that would happen in each tank, other than Lakeville. Lakeville tank, there's not much of an issue out there. Torbank tank, the golf ball tank off of Cooper Drive, that is an issue. That's a 500,000 gallon tank. We use 150,000 gallons a day. So right there, you know, it's out there for almost 4 days. So circulation, and, you know, so that's where I get back to, like, by fixing these leaks, the water sits there longer. And we need to make sure that anything that can be used up on the demand of chlorine, we remove it. And HAAs, THMs, disinfectant byproducts, they're known to cause cancer. So it's our job to make sure we keep these numbers as low as possible. Is that good?
I feel like I got a few more percentage points there. I'm close.
Okay.
We got to keep the water moving, and okay.
And we got to remove the gases off the tanks.
The gases, except for the one spot, right? The one spot.
The Lakeville tank.
Yeah, okay.
Bracken Road.
I just want to clarify for anybody watching. This project is something that has been in the works for some time.
Years.
Years.
2
And
years.
it is not related to all of our recent discussions about taste and odor.
Correct.
It's completely unrelated.
Completely.
Just for anybody watching at home. Do you have something? You seem to be inhaling. No?
No,
Okay.
no, no.
Anybody else with questions for Andy on this? Paul has questions for you.
Yeah, that's it.
No,
So,
he just
like,
wants to add
Paul was just
something.
saying something to me, like, so we're not consuming water as fast as we were because of the leaks are down to a minimal. So it doesn't circulate through the system as fast. So that's why you get these byproducts.
Right. So that's what you're saying. So we realized this happened after we started tightening up the system, which is great because we found all these leaks, so we're not wasting water. And then the problem was now we have this really tight system, so
Right.
it's not able to off gas. So you're creating this
Right.
system
And
so
it,
that it'll be able to release the gases.
I mean, the simple way, like, that's, Yeah.
That's the point.
and that's why we went from a 4 million gallon tank to a 150,000 gallon tank. It's dangerous as far as, like, you know, you got to make sure that the plant's on their A game if there's ever a fire, because you know, we need to meet the demand of the system. So, you know, for the last year, I've been kind of nervous for that, but that's why I want to push this forward. But we have enough storage. And the other thing, too, is when they put that tank in service 50 years ago, or whenever that was, in the 60s, so 60 years ago. It wasn't in like the best location. It might have been physically the best location as far as where it should be, but it should have been like closer to the big users down by the waterfront.
Right.
And we have what we have, so we have to make it work.
Sorry. I just remind me because you mentioned Richard. I mean, this is one of those things. You fixed a whole bunch of watch this chemistry study right now. Ready?
Oh.
Fixed a bunch of stuff, improved it, and the unintended consequences. You have another problem that you need to solve that comes from doing the right thing in the first place, and so it creates this excess. Question: Richard Wishney Park. Is there any relationship with any of that and the fact that that water level, the way you guys monitor, or it's totally irrelevant to whatever's happening
Totally.
in the tank?
Yeah, totally different.
That's all I need to know. See that? Chemistry 101 right there.
So thank you, Andy. It's always interesting when you come in with water, and I learn all the time. So I'm good with this. My question is, what is the total estimate project for this whole thing?
Okay, so that's a good question. So initially, I've asked that question to Hazen and Sora because the last time they did this project was about 5 years ago in Newcastle, and it was like $600,000. But our estimated budget is from 600,000 to 1.2 million. They really it's kind of a, it depends on what these contractors come in at. I've 6 contractors have picked up bids this week, and people have called me, and the equipment manufacturers kind of wait till the end because they'll release the numbers probably Friday or Monday right before the bid, but I don't know until it comes in, honestly. So it's kind of site specific. That's probably the best answer I can give.
Oh,
You're getting a friend here.
Paul is
Friend.
going to
What
come
do we got
up.
here, Paul?
Thank you. Good evening. Sorry to go back. I just wanted not to discount your question because it actually is related. The level in the Richard Wishney Pond used to be supplemented by overflow in the water tanks some years back.
Right.
And the telemetry, which was converted and made integral to our SCADA system, now tells the plant to turn off the pumps that fill those tanks. And we don't overflow the tank every night like we used to. And we estimated we saved about 500,000 gallons per evening, right? Which was an exorbitant cost for treated water that used to happen, and fill that to capacity where we had to drain it off. Once we stopped that, the water was now fed by natural surface water, which improved the biolife in the pond, which is now maintained by our chief filter plant operator. And now we have no treated water going into the pond anymore.
Just all natural, right?
Yep.
So, like what Paul just said, so the distribution guys or a complaint would come into the public, they'd walk around, the tank's flooding, the tank's flooding, the tank's flooding. They never had the communication back to the filter plant. Oh, the tank's flooding. All right, let's control the plant and send less water. It was that simple.
Can I ask you a more related question to what the budget of this project is going to be?
Mm-hmm.
You might, maybe Tom has the numbers as well. But out of all the leaks that we have saved, how much money do you think we save by resolving the leaks?
Oh, well, I'd have to look at what the purchase cost is, but just on 600,000, let's just use 500,000 gallons a day. 500,000 gallons is close to $1,000 a day before chemicals. So 365,000 a year on raw water cost, just raw, not on the finished. That's New York City purchased water before it even goes to the plant. Yeah.
We calculated that for a year. Maybe the leak was more than over a year that we.
Yeah, I mean, the one leak that we found in the through the leak detection program because of New York City was 400,000 gallons a day, just that one leak, and that went back over 20 years.
Wow.
Because when I was hired here in 2005, our flows at the time, the best time to look is in the wintertime because people aren't using irrigation. The weather's not affected. It was like 3.3 million gallons a day. Yesterday, it's 2.6. So these numbers are real. I mean, it's what's leaving the plant, and we check it all the time. Sundays, it's 3 million because people do more laundry. You know, we have these numbers down. We do minimum night flow studies, and we have the ability now with the SCADA system to just say, oh, we have a problem in low service, mid service, high service. And then the team of guys will go look and find it in that area because we have totalizers in each pump station. It's totally different. And because the New York City costs are so expensive with the sludge, with the raw water, chemicals, it all adds up. Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay.
This was, as always, enlightening. And I know, how long have you been with the village now?
05.
05? So 15 years? 16
Yeah.
years? And I know that you've done a tremendous amount of work in optimizing the plant and the distribution system, and every stage that you bring to has been to our advantage. And this is the big dollar stuff that we're talking about now, but it didn't start with this. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And just a quick update, has nothing to do with it, but the equipment that you approved last week should be delivered Friday from Texas. The highway department, DPW, is building a 10 by 11 foot pad, 12 inches thick, in the air structure. And the unit itself is going to sit 21 feet high. So it's like we have to do a bunch of rebar work, which you can appreciate, and also you. And 4,000 psi, so it's like a whole process. And we're just going back with Arcadis, who did the design, because they're allowing us to build this in place, and then they just want to see the documentation to control costs. We already have a conversation. I've had so many conversations with the health department. I know that the manager and Stuart had brought this up to me this morning. Is the health department good with this? It's going to be an emergency approval. They just want to see the documentation along the way. We've pulled them into the process because we wanted their recommendation of what they wanted. We didn't want designs sent to them. They're like, no, don't do that. So they're kind of all set with this because I don't want to wait for a 3-month approval after we build this and we still have episodes of taste and odor and we can't put it online. We cannot put that online until they say go. Yeah.
Thank you, Andy. And since I went a public meeting, I guess on Friday I'll be around the village, and I would love to see that. So I'll be,
Yeah. Okay.
I'll give you a call. We'll go to the manager's office, set up something that I can stop by. I will be curious to see the whole thing. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to be at least notified. I just would like to see it set. You know, in other words, just see the piece of equipment and, you know, go over the scope a little bit with you just to understand it more.
Right.
You know, so when you know that, you can just shoot me an email.
Yep.
And I'll make accommodations.
Sounds good. Thank you.
To see it set then.
Well, to see it, you know,
Yeah.
if all the stars align and there's no hurricanes, it'll be here Friday. You know,
As soon as I know,
understand
you guys
delivery
will-
processes. So if it comes Friday, we're doing good.
Yeah, and it's, you know, we're gonna put it in the corner of the parking lot. We're gonna put a tarp on it, but in
Right,
the
right.
meantime, we're building this thing, and the powder activated carbon is coming from West Virginia. It's proprietary stuff. We paid for the studies to be completed on that. One performed much better than the other, but logistically, we might get another supplier and see how that works. We're just figuring out how much we need to keep on site because it's 20,000 pounds.
Right.
That's a lot of bags. And then just so the board's aware, we're still dealing with that lab in Jacksonville, Florida, Performance Engineering. We're sending them 2 samples a week, at least on our raw water. So we're not guessing. We want to see what the numbers are coming into our plant from New York City, what's leaving. We're documenting that for the health department. So 2 raw water, 2 finished water samples. And by us understanding the raw water sample, it's going to determine how much pack we actually use. You know, if we're paying $1 a pound by the time trucking is all set, we don't want to overfeed and waste money. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
We usually take a break around 9 o'clock, but do people need a break right now, or can we continue with the agenda? Okay.
I'm good.
Madam Manager.
Okay, thank you. So next, I'd like to invite our Assistant Village Manager, Maddie Zahaj, up to talk about a very exciting project because it's cold now, but before you know it, we'll all be down in the riverfront. And wouldn't it be nice to walk through Henry Gordine Park and get something? We're not sure what it could be yet, but a variety of different things. But Maddie's been working on an RFP to get somebody in to do concessions at the Henry Gordine kiosk, and we're very excited about that possibility. So, Maddie, please
Okay.
give us the details and tell us when we can plan to put our order in.
Get started. Yeah. Thank you very much. Good evening, board. I brought hard copies for everybody because I thought it might be a little bit easier to look at here. You're good? Okay. So this is super exciting. As most of you probably know, this kiosk has been vacant for quite some time. Recreation Superintendent Bill Garrison was kind enough on my second day working for the village to take me down on a tour of sorts. So I was able to take some pictures and actually see the inside. My understanding, sort of as a bystander, is that a couple of ideas had been proposed for the kiosk at various times, some of which were, not found to be practical, a couple of which I talked about with Bill, but in speaking with Manager DeTore about what we wanted to do for the RFP, the consensus we came to was that it would be interesting to just sort of let vendors give us some ideas, and then basically bring it back to the board and see what you guys think would be the best idea for down there. So we're thinking it might be food service, but there's been a couple other creative ideas floated, so we're sort of interested in what pops up. And it's a seasonal use only. It's only probably going to be, I would think, between April and October, something to that effect, because the building itself isn't insulated, so it wouldn't really be great for something over the winter. But wouldn't it be nice to have something cool down there to visit and a good place to meet? So I look forward to any feedback that you have on what's there. We are hoping to have this going by the start of the warm season, so maybe kick off at the beginning of May. I have the draft is dated Monday, February 10th for this to go out. Obviously, depending on how this conversation goes, that date might shift a bit. But like I said, I'm very interested in what feedback the board might have at this time.
What were some of the other ideas that were not food service?
So one that I talked to Bill Garrison about that I had heard, again, just sort of through the grapevine as a resident of Ossining, was that it would be a cool place to do something related to kayaks. So obviously, it is quite small. Certainly no one's storing any kayaks or anything like that in there, but as sort of the vending location where you can pick up your key to go unlock it from another place. I had gotten into some conversations with him. Bill is a kayak expert, and he was telling me that based on the way the topography is, if you're looking at the river from the kiosk, going off towards the right-hand side, he said that because of the slope of the land going into the water and issues with high tide, that would perhaps not be an excellent place to launch. And if you did want to do a kayak thing there, you certainly could, but you might be better served to walk around the Boat and Canoe Club and go on the other side. Which, that doesn't mean it's not possible, but certainly it would be wonderful if you could just kind of jump in right there. That was the other idea that I had heard. I'm trying to remember if there was something else that wasn't food service related. As I had mentioned to the board also, there have been a couple vendors already who, over the years have approached the village. The emails, Stuart was kind enough to provide to me that he's received during his tenure of people who are interested and, waiting with bated breath for this RFP to be released. So certainly we will be excited to share that with all of those people on that list as well.
A couple more that come to mind. Could you sell alcohol out of this?
I think that would be something that the board,
You need a permit from the board because you'd be selling
Right.
alcohol on the property, but the board would have to approve that.
But if approved, then you could.
I don't see why not.
And that's helpful. And in terms of, sorry. Check 1 2. Is this my camera here? Hello, public. Thank you.
Oh boy.
So the two things that come to mind, if we do especially like a food kind of thing, would be refuse, right? So garbage, etc., and seating is another thing. So I don't know if that would be part of the RFP process, if that would be part of the question and answer, or depend on anything else. But those are the two things that come to mind with food service specifically.
I think that was sort of contemplated, like I said, in some of the prior conversations that Council Kahan had with some other folks. And, you know, I believe there is also an agreement in effect with GDC about sort of how that area is maintained and managed. So it would definitely have to be a conversation. Signage and things of that nature would have to be worked out.
GDC is Ginsburg Development Companies.
And
I didn't know that.
I'm sorry. Yes.
No acronyms. I don't know anything acronyms. Thank you very much.
Month one.
Okay.
Maddie, would there be any, so if you were going to do something that if you were for serving alcohol or beer or whatever, is there any discussion with GDC about coordinating with 3 Westerly on, you know, just making sure you're complimentary in your service?
Exactly. So as not to step on toes, basically, that's something that was highlighted again in many of those emails, is to not interfere with the operations of the restaurant and basically be doing something very different from it is that what they're offering.
And that's part of the contract that we had with them before. So remind me, Paul Stewart knows better, maybe Paul knows better than this. So the maintenance of this particular establishment, of this building, freestanding building, who's doing this right now?
I believe it's them.
I don't
believe under the latter land acquisition development agreement.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
That it's theirs, because one of the emails I'd sent to Maddie was a work on that. So a lot of that is essentially with Ginsburg Development. There was a whole issue with getting the lock changed so that they allowed us to do that. So it's at this point, Ginsburg Development is the responsible party for maintaining that area.
So with that in mind, and I know I don't want to deviate too much of that, but can we have them replace that sign on the bathrooms, please?
Thank you.
Yes, that is, yes, that has been discussed and it will be replaced.
So
It will
the
be
next
replaced
time,
soon.
If I was to go there this weekend to the park with my daughter, that will be replaced.
We will try to get it replaced. I don't know if it'll be replaced this weekend, but it will be replaced promptly.
I don't know what the sign situation is, but actually,
No, it's actually in the
based on
picture.
our okay, I don't know. I just thought that was a ripped piece of paper. Based on our gender neutral bathroom signage policy, this is a gender neutral bathroom.
Is that something? Would you like to replace it with
Yes,
that
we
sign?
have the village.
Okay, so then
You could say restroom underneath it if you want, because sometimes that comes up, but you know the signage shows.
so we could do that.
Great.
And then again, it's just really
It's a big hardcore sign. Too.
it just may take a little longer because we have to order
We
the
put
sign.
restroom on the bottom while they get the sign
Yeah.
in order. I think that could be pretty simple. But I'm actually interested in having something there. I think it will be valuable for us. I don't know about kayaks and stuff like that, because we do have the town not too far. It has a stance already, so I'm not sure if I'll be in favor of that. But definitely something that I have heard before. So I'm glad that this is. And I know we started this conversation last year, so I'm supportive of something that will be helpful for our community. So thank
Okay.
you, Manny.
And so the parameters are like from a certain month to a certain month. Your goal is to have a 3-year contract. So there's the seating, there's bathroom locations, there's where do employees to this thing park, who's in charge of, like, you know, obviously I just saw this. I didn't get the whole thing, but it changes, and you're not giving a lot of time. Basically, I think you're assuming people that, well, how are you getting this information out? Like, how are you getting this RFP out?
So I think this would certainly be something that I would ask be included in the weekly blast that comes out of our office.
Yeah, we would include in the weekly blast, and I think we'd also look at some other opportunities where I'm less familiar where you would, you know, the way you would post a typical municipal RFP, but I think we can figure out places where we can put it out so that, you know, there might be somebody across the river who's doing something, across the county on the Sound Shore where you have a lot of these types of things. So it's possible like the county may have some resources where we can push it out, and we could put it out to, we have to think about that a little bit because again, I'm not as sure how to reach that demographic that does this type of thing. That said, we do have some people who have already sort of requested it. So there's, I think, about 3 or 4 companies that are looking, you know, have been waiting for this too.
And sometimes they're local residents who see this happening and they think, wow, this would be a great opportunity, and then
Exactly.
they look for some entity that can help them make it happen. So, a simple press release might get picked up certainly by the Patch or by the Gazette
Yep,
or the
exactly.
Examiner, so people in the region might, some industrious entrepreneur might want to
So
respond.
for me, it would be, I would prefer, my preference will be someone local, because I think that will bring more value to what that means for our community. So someone local would be.
Building on that, I don't know if this would fit, but to me, it would be really valuable. I was talking to a trustee in Haverstraw, right across the river, and he talked about coming to Ossining every now and then to take the train. And he goes, "Oh, and I go to that restaurant right on the water," but he's never been really to Main Street. And I found that amazing. He's never been to Main Street, and so if this, what do you call this? Kiosk. If this kiosk is live and there's people there and there's stuff you can buy, if you could have pamphlets of this is Ossining, here's our downtown, here's what we're all about. I don't know if that would fit with
tourism,
like a tourism thing, but then is it like half information booth, half
Sure.
hot dog stand? I don't know. But if you're following the RFP, is that like now you have to answer questions like where's the whatever? Like maybe that's right.
But if they're local, then no.
If they're local, they know.
So I think the question then would be when we make an agreement with somebody that we have the ability to provide information about happenings in our community in their space. So they manage the space, they sell the stuff, but we still have the ability to put up posters or
have some takeaways.
flyers,
Things,
brochures, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, good idea.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, I tried to make it clear in there that we really are looking for someone who's going to be a partner with the village. So not just an independent kiosk that's operating selling sunglasses, but somebody who is going to actively make an effort to work with the village and build a partnership, help with branding, that kind of stuff. So, and I do also want to mention that I have reached out to a lot of our other neighbors along the Hudson to see if they, have any experience doing this. I have not been terribly successful, so I'm going to tap Bill and see if maybe he can put me in contact with some folks. And I've also talked to our assessor, Fernando Gonzalez, about what some of the downtown rental, per square foot is looking like. We didn't ask for anything specific in this proposal. We're just sort of hoping that folks are going to, come up with a business model that works for them, and then we can kind of, negotiate it once we choose
just
something
remind me
good.
how many square feet that is.
That's what I'm looking for.
So looking at
It's
yeah,
tiny.
it's very, very small.
Once you
Right.
put
What is like
two people in
400 square feet or
I
something.
mean, if you look at page 6, it's 16 and what is that, 1/4 feet across, and then 7 and some odd feet between the countertop and the window. I mean, it's quite small. And that's without a refrigerator in there. There's sort of a blank space where a refrigerator or a freezer could be. So that, that cuts down on the space by another.
What was it built for originally?
This,
The history.
this is the. So
I mean, it's so small. They must have.
it
thought
was
like what, an ice cream parlor or
basically
something?
ice cream, snacks. It does not have any, like, it's not fit up to be a restaurant. Like, you can put a fridge or a freezer, but you
A
can't really.
fryer that-
You can't prepare.
It's all going to be
No ventilation?
pre-prepared, or ice cream or something like that. And then the other aspect of it is it's a little sort of museum of Henry Gordine and
Well, that I think
Yeah.
was done because, I mean, if it were already used, I don't think that would have been done. I think it sort of happened. It was like a good idea. It's not.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, it's
Is-
been up there for a while.
About 180 square feet.
no, it's smaller than I thought it was.
That's without the bathroom.
Right.
So the bathroom, that part doesn't count.
Yeah, there's about half of it that can be used for this purpose, and then there's a storage room and the restroom, which is a public
But
amenity.
with the storage room, I'm counting because
Right.
that's part of it. So there's about 180 square feet.
And did you put in? I mean, again, no time to
Mm-hmm.
read the RFP, but did you put in like it can be open like till 2 in.the morning or till 10, or you're just waiting for the RFPs and seeing what people come back with?
Just waiting to see what people
Okay.
propose. And also, we put in the 3 years with 3-year renewal. That's certainly open also if we want to
course.
say we want to do one season and sort of see how it shakes out. So I suppose the next step I would ask for would be putting a resolution on to actually. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm so
I
sorry.
just wanted to make 2 comments.
Yeah.
They're very minor. I think it's good that you didn't put any parameters on what type of business it is, especially because they're so limited by space. They could heat food or they could hand you cold food, and that's about it. So, whatever anybody thinks can succeed there is going to be an asset to the community if it works. But then I'm not seeing if you specifically referenced it, but I want people to come to us with proposals that we're going to be interested in entertaining as much as possible. So I think we all agreed that we want it to be complementary to 3 Westerly, as you said. So hopefully that would be intuitive to someone, but if it's not, I don't know if do you explicitly state that in here somewhere?
I do not, but some supportive language would definitely help.
Yeah, just so they don't come in and basically offer the 3 things that are on, the hot items on the 3 Westerly appetizer menu or something.
The pretzels or
yeah, because because they might have come up with a different idea if they'd known it to be sensitive to that. So they should spend 15 minutes looking online at the 3 Westerly menu and compliment it, not compete with it. Those are my 2 thoughts. Any others before Maddie tells us
I
her
just
act?
think that I appreciate the local thing, but I would do the chamber, any other business sort of places, send something to all the businesses. Because I would imagine if you have already a business and now you just want to sell, I don't know, lollipops and ice cream, because you sell it anyway now, it's just in the summer expanding on it. I would assume there are folks in Croton, that there are a lot of businesses in Croton that I think would like to just have a place, Briarcliff, like just our neighbors, local paper, whatever. It's also sort of cool because I think even if you put an ad in a local paper and it says, it would also promote the waterfront at the same time, right? It's not just like, hey, here's an RFP, which is how municipalities do it, but a business opportunity to bring to the waterfront because it's so busy, also talks about our waterfront in that, because most RFPs are like legalese in the back of, in the corner that nobody can understand unless you're specifically looking for that. And I do appreciate that some people have already come and feel like, hey, I already have an idea. Why are you now giving me competition? But it's actually our job.
Right.
Is to open it up to as many as
Has
possible.
been told there would be an RFP. So.
There has to be, and who knows? And having an annex from a place in Croton, and maybe they eventually move their whole business here, and that's good for us. It's all part of good business, and I love that idea.
And actually, I don't think we need to take out an ad because I think, like you're saying, it's a business opportunity. Attach a really pretty picture of this in Henry Gordon Park and say this is a great business opportunity and provide the link, and I think it'll get picked up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
It'll get some visibility.
Yay.
Alrighty. Nice job.
So would we be able to put a resolution on for next week, do you think? Or is that, do you want some time to hang with it?
Next Wednesday's fine.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, put this picture on. I like this picture. Where's the camera?
Great picture.
Can we do Photoshop on that sign, Elise?
No, she doesn't have to put that, but yeah.
Let's do this. So before it goes out, that will definitely be fixed. I will give you my word, in one way or another.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you.
The photo that they include with the article will be a beautiful picture of our waterfront.
Yeah, that's the important
Including
part.
the kiosk.
Not the kiosk, the waterfront.
It's just the RFP that most people aren't going to look at. It's fine. All right. Alrighty, Madam Clerk. No, not that. Madam Manager. Sorry, no.
Okay.
New job. Different job.
Thank you, Maddie. We're excited. I'm excited about getting something to eat or drink down there this summer, so I'm happy.
Or sunglasses.
Or wear
whatever.
or kayak. So it's all good. Next up, Corporation Counsel. Stuart Kahan is going to be discussing some administrative procedures and technical standards that we need to codify for backflow devices. Backflow devices are very important to ensure that the flow of wastewater goes in the right direction, and all backflows in 3 units for multifamily and up, and commercial backflows we really are responsible to, they're inspected also, not only do we inspect them, but Westchester County Board of Health requires that we do, and we are held to that standard every year. So there's been some language that we need to tighten up to make sure that when people are cited for not having operational backflow devices, that we can make sure that we can enforce that, because we do get we can get the county wants us, and we want everybody's backflow devices to be flowing in the right way. So. Stuart, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Good evening, folks. The reason this is necessary is that our code provides, and this was when it was adopted back in 1993, that the administrative procedures and technical standards relating to what is formerly called the cross-connection program shall be adopted by the Village Board of Trustees pursuant to resolution after a public hearing. I spoke with Board Superintendent Andy Teese. I spoke with Building Inspector Joe Agostinelli, and it does not appear that, in fact, there was ever such a resolution or ever such an adoption. To avoid any possibility of having any of these pending matters dismissed from court, what we want to do is basically get this on for a public hearing. The resolution to call for the public hearing would be presented next week. The public hearing would be on the 19th. Basically, the technical standards and procedures are in the draft resolution that I sent to you folks, this afternoon, and it has 7, which basically match what we do now. And this is consistent with both the Westchester County Department of Health regulations and the New York State Department of Health regulations with regard to the cross-connection devices. And as Karen mentioned, in the village and consistent with the state regulations, residential properties of 3 units and more and all commercial properties have the backflow devices. They're tested annually. When they are initially installed, it goes through a review process through the county, and the county must in fact sign off. And our water department through the building department, they maintain the necessary records, and the particular types of devices that are used are determined through the water superintendent in conjunction with the building inspector. So those folks are all aware of that. That's all in here. The resolution also will indicate, just so that there's no question, that the technical standards and administrative procedures are in effect immediately and have retroactive effect, so that there's no issue with regard to in the past, does anyone have an issue? Because we do have matters currently pending in justice court. The village is very active with this. The county, audits us, and frankly, we have a very high rate of success with regard to this. And I finally put in at the end that if in fact any of these procedures or standards have to change, Andy or Joe can notify us, and we can come back to the board and with another resolution. But this at least essentially closes a loop, which otherwise it's a loop for water. I guess I didn't mean it that way, but that is just to be done because again, the code specifically has that the standards are to be adopted by the board. It does require the superintendent to operate the cross-control program, which is what we do now. We're just sort of making it formalized in terms of a resolution to both for the administrative procedures and the standards that are followed.
It's fine with me. Thank you for identifying this so that we stay out of trouble in the future. I know we have been very diligent and on top of things with our backflow devices, so we certainly want to keep on that successful path of being in compliance. Does anybody have any further questions, or are you okay with putting this on an agenda for next week?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's not what I was looking at you for. All right.
Or you could just move the mic closer.
Is there anything else? Otherwise, we'll have okay. Motion to adjourn to executive session for matters of real property.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So with that, thank you very much for joining us. Most of us will be at the courthouse next Wednesday at 7:30 for the legislative session. This meeting is adjourned to executive session.